I'm Gabe Lajeunesse, and this is the Abundance Agenda, where we examine policies that help us build more, live better, and leave no one behind. This project is sponsored in part by Acred Development Holdings, LLC. Well, welcome to the show. We got Thom Lauzon, the mayor of Barre. Great to have you, Tom.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, as I mentioned to you, I'm doing some interviews of municipal officials around central Vermont, just trying to get the word out about what we can all do to improve the housing situation. We're in a housing crisis. We can see as we talk about the doom loop, you look at the hospital, we're trying to attract physicians and nurses, and there's no housing. The same thing with our schools. People want to come here and work as teachers, and they look at the housing environment. It's just really creating a lot of problems. And so we see some movement. And Barry, I mean, you're just in the headlines all the time, Tom. We just appreciate the good work you're doing. So I wanted to dig into that a little bit. And I've got a couple categories. So maybe I'll start off talking about zoning a lot. That's what a lot of people are doing. The legislature helped a bit with that by mandating some things the last couple of years. And so that's good. But what's Barry done to try to increase density and make it easier for people to build?
Uh, well, um, we have increased the coverage ratios. So if you want to build a home, for example, if you want to do infill development, we're making it easier by easing, not eliminating, but easing parking restrictions, lot coverage ratios, the minimum lot size. Um, Housing, generally speaking, today, households are smaller. The
Yeah,
days
exactly.
when you and I grew up, and I'm one of 8 children, for
Oh my
example.
goodness. Yeah.
So,
Right.
there were 10 people in my home growing up. That's changed. Karen and I had 2 children.
Yeah.
So we're seeing that change. So what we're seeing is that people needing 2,400 square feet, those days are kind of over. People are happy, even when you talk to younger Vermonters, they're happier. They don't want to spend time in their apartment or in their condo. They want to spend time out experiencing Vermont. So
Right.
so what we're trying to do is we're trying to accommodate that trend here in Barre.
Yeah. So making it possible for some of these smaller homes to be built, making it easier to
Absolutely.
happen. Yeah.
Absolutely. We've had a few tiny homes built in the city. Those are really cool. So, again, as I said earlier before we were recording, we're swinging at anything. If somebody
Yeah.
pitches something at us, we are swinging at it and we're swinging for the fences.
I don't know if you know about this. I've heard that there's a proactive effort to actually identify lots where ADUs might be appropriate. I heard Barry's,
Yeah,
some of the city staff are working on that. Do you know about that? It sounded
yeah,
really
I sure
intriguing
do.
to me.
Yeah, I sure do. Basically, they've gone through and they're identifying not only lots where infill or ADUs would be appropriate, but also they're creating a list of all available possible lots in the city. So,
Oh,
for
wow.
example, you may have a home that was built on a double lot. We'll be reaching out to those folks saying, and there's nothing that forces anyone. We're just making them aware. Hey, do you realize that your house sits on a double lot? You could easily carve this piece off and make it available. And we're just trying to create a database of places where either ADUs or new dwellings are appropriate.
That's excellent. I just love that proactive nature. So many people, I think California was the first to, mandate ADUs, right? To say, look, we're done with single family zoning. Any lot can have an ADU. Of course, people have gone further than that now, but it takes time for that to catch on. And so now you look at it and there's a lot of ADUs. In fact, if you look at tiny home builders, they're mostly out in California because now that people get it, like the demand happens. So what you need is you need to sort of create that demand by having some people build them. They see them in their neighborhoods and they're like, oh, I could do that. I could put one of those in my side or my backyard, right? And create another
Mhm.
space. And then people have awesome new neighbors and they're excited and they're like, oh, well, this is, it just creates that domino effect. So I'm excited to hear you're doing that. Now, I also noticed you guys have done some dollar lots to Downstreet. That's pretty impressive. I've seen some other communities, with some property that they own and trying to maybe set market rates and stuff. What was the logic behind the dollar lot?
Well, again, that was former Mayor Hemrick who actually came up with that idea, but then he didn't push it forward. He didn't advance it. And so I got together with Carol Dawes, and Carol Dawes is our longtime city clerk. Now she's returned as our city treasurer. And I got together with Carol because Carol is the parking guru. If there's municipal parking, she can tell me how utilized is that lot. So obviously, in that particular instance, we wouldn't have wanted to do a development on Merchants Row. Merchants Row is, probably at 80% capacity 7 days a week. That's right in back of where the Opera House is. But I said, Carol, there's got to be city lots within the city that are not as utilized, that are really underutilized. And Carol identified the municipal lot on Seminary Street. So we literally put out an RFP. Downstreet responded to it, and the city offered. And if you think about it from a tax point of view, we're all looking to grow revenue. Well, if you have a city lot that is being underutilized, doesn't it make sense, to have a housing organization like Downstreet build housing? So they're building 32 units on that site, and the city's going to collect property tax revenue,
Yeah, that's
far,
great.
far and away greater than we were collecting in parking revenue.
Oh yeah. And walkable to
Great
things,
strategy.
right? You're
You got to
increasing
be a
foot
little
traffic.
careful. Yeah, you got to be a little careful with it. I mean,
Yeah.
and the last thing we want to do is create parking problems for our downtown merchants.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I can't say that we could do that on every municipal lot, but this one really worked and it worked well. So, hopefully, a couple of years from now, I believe they're breaking ground this fall. And a couple of years from now, we'll have, or a year from now, we'll have 32 units of housing available, affordable housing available in Barre.
That's
Uh, you
amazing.
know, so Prospect Heights, Wabi Park, 143 North Main Street, we've got a lot of housing projects going on. And I should have said, Dave, right from the beginning, look, I may drive these things a little bit, but I got a great team. Nicholas Torella Castro, our city manager, works really hard. He and I are totally on the same page with regard to the need for housing. Janet Shatney, Tess Taylor, Josh Jerome from BADC. I mean, I could go on and on, but we've got a great team and they work very hard.
Yeah, it's fabulous. I mean, I think one of the things for communities in the area to be thinking about, if they look at some of the successes that you're having and start trying to figure out how they can replicate some of that, particularly with Downstreet or any of these other tax credit type properties, there's only so much of that money that's authorized in any given year. And so
Mhm.
I know from conversations with, Angie Harvin, they're like booked out. They've got their whole schedule like through 2028. So you kind of, if you thought there was something appropriate, you sort of have to have in line, know that's going to take a few years to get into the cycle. And you have to do what you did, right? Which is really to be aggressive and to chase after it. But certainly there's lots of opportunity for that throughout. Now, I saw, congratulations. I saw that for you got the TIF approved. And so that's great. And you also are mentioning a bunch of other funding channels. So maybe you could just run through what you guys have done to apply for these various pots of money. I don't know if you've done anything with CHIP yet. I know that's new, but there's the flood relief money. There's a bunch of different things. So do you mind just giving us a rundown of what you've applied for?
Sure. Well, our focus right now is on the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery CDBG-DR. $55 million available to Washington County, and this is 2023 flood
Mhm.
recovery
Yeah,
money, not
yeah.
2024. Um, and we are focusing on that because we believe, I mean, we lost housing in 23. We are one of the few communities that can actually say that. I mean, a lot of communities were damaged, and I'm not trying to minimize anyone's suffering, but we actually lost housing units, and there's not many, municipalities in Washington County that can say that. So, we're hitting that really hard. We have this $55 million available. We have about 25 to $28 million worth of projects, including the ones I just mentioned that we're applying for.
How many units of housing would that create if you were to get all those awards?
It would be over 200. It would be, I think, somewhere around 225.
And do you have any sense of how many homes had to be demolished or
Well, I
after the
mean,
flood?
after the flood, there were some that were demolished because the city bought them out.
Uh,
The ones that were along the Stevens Branch, we actually bought. If we could cluster homes so that we could do a good flood mitigation project and reclaim the floodway, we purchased homes and demolished those. For the most part, if you look in Barry's North End, those homes, they're not occupied, but they haven't been demolished.
okay.
And so that's what we're trying to do in the North End. We had a great meeting with the residents of the North End and we listened to their feedback. So our plans for the north end include a mid-rise building, an apartment building that would be a mid-rise, not a high-rise. And we're going to work within the neighborhood. We'll selectively remove certain homes, but there are also homes that can be elevated.
Yeah.
So we're doing basically it's just a makeover. That is a long-term plan, but it's a plan that we take very seriously. It's a plan that gave it. It won't be committed. It won't be completed rather during my tenure as mayor. I can promise you that. Yeah, I mean, it is at least a decades-long plan, and there has to be something done every year.
Well, I'm glad that you're out there aggressively pursuing those dollars. I mean, I don't know, everybody was impacted, but when you look at again, residential neighborhoods in Barre, I mean, the river moved like so far. It was crazy to see. And I went in and did, I'm sure like everybody, we all went in and helped muck people's houses out, and you just see what people are sort of dealing with. And then the back end of it, how do you make things? And a lot of folks are not in a position, they're at a certain age or whatever it is, that they just are not in a position to really just pick up and move. So it's amazing that you guys are out there working together with the community, trying to get some housing built and work on this. And again, rivers are alive, right? I mean, it's not like they're static. And so how do we build up? How do we build smart, right? How do we give the river room to breathe where we need to and take advantage of the opportunities? I had moved into the area shortly after Irene, and we were down in Northfield when we first got into town, and they did that they just basically, did what you're doing, right? They bought a bunch of homes out, created a little park, and just said, look, we're going to allow this, to have, be space for the river to move. And of course, when things came up in 23, that area would have been flooded, but because they had made those changes, that was mitigated. So just that's what it takes. It takes a team, right? It takes a
Mhm.
lot of conversation. And Thom, I'm glad you have a great team. I'm glad you're down there leading in this way. And I think, again, I have a bunch of interviews and there's a lot of communities that are doing really great things. But I think the overall message that I see is we can't wait. We have to be the change that is going to make our communities great for the next, 40, 60, 100 years, right? And you look at the built environment that we have, and I hear a lot from preservationists and stuff, and we love our historic downtowns. Barry's got an awesome historic downtown. Montpelier
Mhm.
does, Waterbury, these are great. We want to preserve those, but it doesn't mean I've been to lots of amazing historic towns, like go to Park City. Like you go to really cool places and it's like, okay, obviously we're not changing like these structures that are sound and have a purpose. We're not going to change that. But
Mhm.
if they're not sound, right, and they're threatened and they're creating, some issues down the road, how do we create some new things? And anyway, you have to be future looking. So thanks for the good work you're doing. Is there anything I didn't ask you about that you'd like to make sure our listeners know about?
Well, you mentioned the CHIP program. I think that's a great program. We're looking at that, but it's a little bit new. We're gonna we're gonna let someone else figure that out, and I suspect we'll be more serious about engaging developers relative to the CHIP program probably around the end of the year. I mean, right now, $55 million available for Washington County. Our focus has to be on this flood recovery money.
Yeah, you
I
got to
mean,
get that.
that's
When does the board meet to award that?
They meet the pre-applications were due in August. We submitted our pre-applications. We got feedback from ACCD. The final applications, and you had to submit the pre-app. You couldn't just move. So the final applications are due September 30th,
Okay.
and and they're complex, detailed applications. So again, that's where the folks that I was just mentioning, that's where our focus is right now.
Yeah. Well, good luck in that process, Thom. Thanks so much for being with us today.
We're going to be okay. I mean, we will. Barry was hard hit. We know we're
Yeah.
going to get something. We know we're not going to get everything. But what I always remind people, it's not lost on me that these funds are competitive.
Yeah.
So what that means is that if they award money to Barry, well, that may mean that Plainfield didn't get everything they wanted, or it may mean Montpelier didn't get everything they wanted. And I remind people that we have an obligation to perform and perform at a high level because, there's only so many dollars available in Vermont. And thankfully, you mentioned Downstreet. I think Downstreet views the city of Barry as a good, honest working partner. Um, We talk to them all the time. We work really well with them. They've done a number of projects here in Barre. So, for me, it's just about working hard, being aware of the opportunities, and being a great working partner. And, our team does exactly that every day.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Tom. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Gabe.